This offseason will define everything for the New York Rangers and where they're going as an organization as Mika Zibanejad speaks out on his future as a New York Ranger, and a new report has revealed that this roster will look completely different come the home opener of next season. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest, but before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with your New York Rangers as we head towards a very busy, unpredictable, and insane offseason coming up here, it's free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and you get to stay up to date with everything that's going to happen. But let's dive right into it. After the season finale last night against the Tampa Bay Lightning at home in Sam Rosen's last game, we're going to touch on Sam Rosen in this video as well. Mika Zibanejad spoke out on his future as a New York Ranger, and Mika Zibanejad said that he has no plans of going anywhere. That is a direct quote, and he has invested a lot of years in New York. Now, as we know, as Jacob Trouba knows, as Barclay Goodrow knows, that doesn't mean anything in terms of the contract specifically, and we'll get into what he said about his contract in a second, but that is nice, and I do appreciate that. And listen, I have Mika Zibanejad's jersey on the wall right behind me. I love Mika Zibanejad. I think he's been a great player for this organization, and he has no plans of going anywhere. But the fact of the matter is this team is moving on very quickly from some of its older players. They're getting a lot younger. And with Mika Zibanejad making what he makes, I have a feeling that Chris Drury is going to do everything he can to move off of not only Mika Zibanejad, but Chris Kreider this offseason. And I want to get to a quote from Mika Zibanejad on playing with Chris Kreider this whole time in New York. And he said, "You never know what's going to happen, but we just try to get to play together again. Just try to go out there and enjoy it. Try not to make it too big of a deal. We just wanted to finish off the season in a good way and try to have some fun." And I thought we did. And we also have another quote from Mika Zibanejad in terms of his contract in the future, again, of him in New York. And he said, "I know what my contract says. Both parties agree to it. And like I said, I think I've earned it. Until it's time to adjust it, I have no plans of going anywhere. I've invested a lot of years here." And now, on one hand, listen, of course he's going to come out and say this. And after everything that's happened with Barclay Goodrow and Jacob Trouba, I think that as a player on this team, you have to be stern, right? You can't just say, I'm open to going wherever, even though my contract, says that I have a no move clause and I don't have to. No player is going to do that. Of course he was going to come out and say this. And I totally understand where he's coming from. But all that being said, I could see Chris Drury trying to move this player this offseason. And I think that it's going to happen. And the reason I think it's going to happen is because some of the reports we will get to in a second. But a couple of things about Mika Zibanejad. Again, I have his jersey on the wall behind me. Love Mika Zibanejad. He gifted Sam Rosen his game-used stick from his 5-goal game against the Capitals a couple of years ago. So I thought that was really cool. Sam Rosen calling his last game as the New York Rangers play-by-play last night. We will miss Sam Rosen. I might do a video on just Sam Rosen in a little bit, but obviously there's a lot to cover in terms of everything that's coming out from the New York Rangers. And Mika Zibanejad also had this to say about the season ending. He said that it kind of feels empty, and he also elaborated that, that again, he was talking about Chris Kreider, but he also elaborated that he feels empty. And, driving to the rink yesterday, he said with the weather being the way that it was, he's usually expecting to get ready and gearing up for playoffs around this time of year, and he wasn't this year, and he was very upset about it. Listen, they did nothing to help themselves down the stretch. So that's all nice to say, but the actions weren't there from the team and some of the players on the team. So they needed to really step their game up. And again, it sucks that they're missing the playoffs, and I can understand why he feels empty, but they had all the opportunities to be able to make the playoffs, and they squandered every single one of them. So I do think that, Chris Drury is going to try and move off of him. And again, he was speaking out on Chris Kreider, what I meant to play with Chris Kreider, and that they didn't want to think about it too much. But I think that both of them this offseason could be gone. I think it's more likely Chris Kreider is gone because of his contract and how easy it is for another team to eat that contract. But Mika Zibanejad, I think, again, it's going to be interesting. And like I said, he elaborated saying that coming to the rink this afternoon with the weather being like this, I'm used to kind of gearing up for playoffs. But that's not the case right now. And I thought this was a very interesting article from Vince Mercogliano as the season wraps up against the Tampa Bay Lightning last night. And here's my final post-game story of the season, setting the scene on an empty feeling for the New York Rangers fans, recognizing the moment with Chris Kreider and Sam Rosen and what comes next. Nobody really knows what this team is going to look like next year. And I thought that was interesting. And that's kind of the sentiment right now, that nobody knows what this team's going to look like next year. And who did that come from? That was Vincent Trocheck that said that, the future captain of this team. I'm going to go ahead and say that. It's either him or JT Miller at this point. Like I said in a previous video, whoever doesn't get the captaincy between those two, they're going to get an A on their chest as well. So again, nobody really knows what this team is going to look like next year, Vincent Trocheck said. And then there were some other quotes from Peter Laviolette as well that he said, that's for sure, but the first order of business will likely involve a head coach firing in Peter Laviolette, who is expected to be relieved of his duties in the coming days, if not hours. I think it's going to be the coming days. I feel like they're going to complete the locker cleanout day, the exit interviews, all of that with Peter Laviolette not being fired yet, and then they're going to let him go and relieve him of his duties. I think they want to know everything and every point of view about what went wrong this season from everyone, from the coaching staff, from the players, everybody. And Laviolette said, those are things I can't control. The year certainly wasn't where it needed to be, but right now I'm here and this is where I want to be. And of course he's going to say that, but I think at this point we know that this team is getting younger. This is a coach who doesn't know how to utilize young players and can't coach young players. So this is a guy that if you're on the brink of a Stanley Cup, you bring in, not a guy who, you know, as you're retooling, you have as your coach. It just isn't. I think that he's going to be fired, and it might be the last bullet for Chris Drury in that way. And I thought this was interesting as well. This was the ending of this article, and I don't want to give too much about the article away. Go check it out. Vince Mercogliano does some amazing work, and the article is a great read to sum up the season and to wrap up the season. But he said, the lack of transparency will allow speculation to run rampant, while the truth will remain a point of contention heading into a long summer. And I think that's the sentiment that everybody's sharing right now. There is going to be so much speculation heading into the draft, free agency. Will players be traded even though they have no movement clauses? They're making it so public that they do want to move off of guys like Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad. And when you look at a guy like Chris Kreider this season, he didn't play the whole season. He was dealing with a back injury. We know that. Even when he was playing in games, he was not even close to 100% of himself. He played in 68 games this year. He only had 30 points, 22 goals. Not the greatest season for his standards. It's not like he's getting that, too old or anything like that either. He's only 33, so if he wasn't dealing with the injury, maybe he has a better season, but at the same time, they need more out of a guy who's making $6.5 million. He only played an average of almost 17 minutes a night this season. They need more from a player like this, and I think that he is getting older. They want to move off of him because, I covered it in another video, but everything that happened this season, what happened with Jacob Trouba, the fact that, relationships soured, I think it's time to move off of him, and you need to get younger as a team anyway. I know we all like Chris Kreider and probably would want him on the team, and same goes for Mika Zibanejad for a portion of the fan base. But the fact of the matter is you're trying to get younger. You're trying to retool this team on the fly so that you can be competitive while JT Miller is still relatively young. And that's not going to happen if you have a couple of these guys on the team. So let me know in the comments what you think about Mika Zibanejad and everything that's come out. Some interesting quotes from Zibanejad saying, I'm not going anywhere. He feels kind of empty that the season ended and didn't want to think about not playing with Chris Kreider anymore. And I had another video earlier today on Chris Kreider. So if you haven't seen that, go check that one out and his future as a New York Ranger. But it looks like they're going to be moving off of, or try to move off, both of these players this offseason. So this team is going to look completely different, and this offseason is going to define what this team is, who this team is, and who stays on this team. Not even heading into next season, but the season after that as well, because I think Chris Drury, while he's not going to fall through the ice, he is on thin ice now at this point. So let me know what you're thinking in the comments, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.